the Constitution gives people a right to peacefully assemble. How the hell can they do that if you have all of this chaos, all of this violence happening? Good day, ladies and gents, serfs and lords. Welcome to another installment of Political, the series that we've creatively named Election 2020, where we follow Trump's attempts to install himself as dictator for another 4 years. I'm joined by Connor Allen. I am Ian Smith, and we're going to talk again. We talked about this a couple of days ago. We're going to talk about it again. We're going to talk about the protests and Black Lives Matter, because this is a story that just keeps progressing. It keeps going. There's just more happening every day.
Absolutely. And so what's happened in this case is that a young black man called Jacob Blake has been shot in Wisconsin, Kenosha, in disputed circumstances. So he was stopped by the police on a domestic call-out. The police tried to detain him. He was tasered at one point. The police drew their weapons, followed him, told him to stop. He went into his car, and the policeman shot him 11 times in the back. And this is the article we have on screen.
I think it might have been, I don't know if it was 7 or 8, but...
Okay. In any case, quite a
we want to be we just want to be accurate here on political. Yeah, so we got an article here from Fox News, the alt-right, far-right publication, and
despicable racist.
Yeah, despicable racist. So President Trump on Wednesday said he will send federal law enforcement and National Guard to Kenosha, Wisconsin, to restore law and order amid days of unrest in the city. We will not stand for looting, arson, violence, and lawlessness on American streets. My team just got off the phone with Governor Evers, who agreed to accept federal assistance. Portland should do the same.
You agree with him? Should the National Guard be there, stopping these people who are outraged that yet another young black person has been gunned down by the police?
Okay, so I mean, there's 2 points there. That sounds like a bit of a loaded argument. Obviously, we'll have to wait.
Almost like I'm setting you up for something.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see the trial, and we'll come to that later on with regards to Jacob Black, who I believe is in recovery in hospital right now, although he may have some serious injuries. But yeah, when it comes to the federal assistance, as Trump put it, if the governor asks, he says, "I've lost control of law and order in my city. I need assistance," and Trump says, "Okay, we're going to send in the Homeland Guard, whoever it is." National Guard. Sorry, that's what they're there for, right? Is this not this homogenous relationship between state and federal government working as it should?
No, absolutely, and I mean, we have to look at the principle, don't we? We have to look at the rule of law and law and order. And let's face it, we can't have an angry mob deciding what happens to the police officers involved. We don't know a lot about the case. We have an out of context video clip of what happened. Why on earth should an angry mob of protesters decide what happens next? 2 people have been shot and killed during these protests. Local communities are terrified that their businesses, their cars, their property is going to be burned and looted by these people. What needs to happen is it needs to be investigated, and due process needs to happen. Why is that such a difficult concept in 2020?
Well, this is it. How have we got to this point? It scares me. It worries me. I have to give credit to the governor, because he is a Democratic governor, and I mean, he's probably faced a lot of pressure to not do this. I don't know, it seems though the Dems are kind of trying to switch the narrative a little bit and sort of say, yeah, riots are bad. We've always said riots are bad, right? It's like Trump with the masks. It's like, yeah, I always said wear masks, right? Well, I mean, this is kind of the same thing. even CNN, I believe now, Don Lemon, the smartest man on television, is saying, yeah, riots are bad. So I think the only reason that they're calling them out, though, and the only reason that they care that these people are dying and these businesses are being ruined, is because they're worried about optics and they're worried about their re-election, or no, not re-election,
absolutely, and
election chances.
And it is Wisconsin. It is a critical swing state in the election. Both Trump and the Democrats have to win the Rust Belt.
This could be like one of the closest states, and it could be a decider state. These are very real possibilities. So
absolutely. So to have the perception of a Democratic-backed mob setting fire to small businesses versus President Trump trying to restore order, or conversely, President Trump trying to destroy the legitimate protests of the people and suppress that.
He's a fascist, isn't he? And he's sending in the SS to quell the protesters and stop people, arguing against his democratically elected position that he holds.
I mean, do you think these people have a point? Because we have seen throughout the last few months several instances of Trump using excessive force in dealing with these protests. We saw in Lafayette Square, for example, just to give off-the-cuff example, him tear gassing protesters to get a photo op with a Bible in a church.
Yeah,
is this more the same, or have things evolved?
I think that was a low point of the year for Trump, the whole Lafayette Square instance, because it's incredibly hard to make an argument for it, because, and we've discussed this before, Lafayette Square is known as an area where people protest. It's right outside the White House. It makes sense. If you want the government to see you and hear you, then that's where you go. That's the best place to go. And it really is not good optics for what happened there. I do believe that perhaps the situation was taken a little bit out of context, because, I suppose it comes down to whether you believe the Attorney General or not, Bill Barr, when he said that the decision was made, we're going to move the perimeter back, or whether you believe...
yeah, but that's the specifics of Lafayette Square. What I'm asking is it... do the protesters have a legitimate fear when Trump sends in the National Guard?
Yeah, well, I was sort of coming to that. So they do... in that sense... listen, what I'm saying is you can use Lafayette Square as an argument to say, well, look, this is just Trump, doing this and doing that. He's trying to quell protesters because they disagree with him. I don't think that's the case. I think this is just about law and order. That he's proclaiming himself as a law and order president. And look, just because these people in Wisconsin, Wisconsin was a Republican state. In the last election, they did swing Republican, but I would imagine, and I would imagine in Kenosha, just being a bit more of a urban area, it probably is more democratically swayed. So even though these people didn't vote for Trump, he still has a responsibility as their president to do what he can to, maintain public order. I think that's all he is doing. It's good optics for his campaign, right? But I just can't get past the principle idea that if people are running riot in the streets, people are dying. I've seen some of the videos. They're walking around just with guns, rifles.
The man with his arm blown off.
Yeah, these aren't defensive. These aren't defensive actions by people walking around with guns. These are people, going out. They're posturing. They're looking for trouble, and they've just got this aura like, well, hey, look at Portland, look at Chicago. They just do what they want, right? We can do what we want. We're untouchable. No one can get us. And
I think that's very important, isn't it? Because there's just a different atmosphere this time. It just feels so different. It feels like the American public has had enough of the protests. It feels like they've had enough of large riots, instability in the streets, demands from radical leftists. They've just had enough, haven't they? And this is reflected in the actions of the governor, who the first thing he did when these riots appeared was to call President Trump and request assistance. And he's a Democrat, for God's sake.
I don't know if that's the first thing he did, but I think that was
one of the first.
That was the eventual thing that he did. Is probably a more accurate way of putting it. Yeah.
So yeah. How? In fact, that's interesting as well. Like, how do you think the Democrats are going to defend bringing in the National Guard? Supposedly backing the Black Lives Movement.
Well, this is it. I think
Joe Biden tweeted today, deploring what happened to the young man who was shot.
Yeah, he did, and he conveniently, I would imagine, conveniently did not talk about the riots and what has happened in Kenosha since last night.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, listen, the Democrats put themselves in this position. They sort of applauded all of this rioting. You know, let's get it straight. Yeah, okay, I'm sure vast majority of people, I guess, were peaceful. I suppose it's kind of difficult to say, to summarize, like, oh, that is the case for sure, but I think the vast majority of people peaceful protesters. But once the lights come down, once it's nighttime, it always just seems to descend into chaos. And
you have these few bad eggs. You have a young man wearing a dark hoodie, throws something, he does something he shouldn't, and suddenly, because it changes the atmosphere. If you've ever been at a protest, it only takes one action such as that, and it suddenly everyone gets put on edge, and it changes the mood completely. And both the police and the protesters are a bit more hostile to each other. Then that has a snowball effect.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, these people are here. It's organized crime, really, because they're here to start trouble right from the beginning.
It's almost as if there's a big organization, you know, they probably define themselves as anti-fascists or something, who make it their stated goal to stir up trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And here's the thing as well: is like and I had this discussion as well recently. When we're talking about these right-wing or far-right-wing organisations, and the latest one now is Proud Boys, there's this immediate pressure, it feels, on people within the right side of politics, or Conservatives or Republican Party, to suddenly, to go, right, oh no, I don't condone this, and I don't condone this, and I don't condone that. Why doesn't that same pressure exist on the Democrats when it comes to people like Antifa and it comes to groups like Antifa?
Absolutely. And I think one of the arguments against that, if I play devil's advocate for a second, would be that organizations such as the Proud Boys might be considered racist, whereas organizations on the left wouldn't, and being racist is not acceptable. But in fact, it always happens when you look at what these people are protesting for, when you look at the protests themselves, you almost never see openly racist goals. You don't see people marching through the United States of America demanding a return to segregation. Just in New York University, that happens. But I think there really is a double standard, and what you have is a cabal of radical leftists, and anytime anybody who's righter than Joe Biden pops their head up above the parapet, they will call them a racist. They will do whatever it takes to suppress an opinion that disagrees with them, using that word, racist.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole different topic when we talk about the suppression of ideas and speech and cancel culture, and I'm sure we'll address that in more depth in other videos. But just something else I want to touch on as well. Obviously, the reason that I suppose it'd be fair to say what sparked these protests in Wisconsin is the event that's happened with regards to the man that was shot by the police, Mr. Blake, and Jacob Blake. This has happened because of again, I don't know what you call it. I call it kind of like the Facebook live culture or whatever, where you just have these videos where you've got maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds of a larger event that may have been happening for hours. It may have been happening for 10 minutes. That might be the full context. But the point is, you don't know. And we often talk about how we worry about this idea of public trials, right? And people are already assumed guilty before anything has been determined.
So,
and I think with the latest, I sound like a boomer now, but with the latest technology, right? And things like Facebook Live, and everyone's got a smartphone in their pocket, and they're recording this live, and it's going out to all the followers, and these videos go viral. I think this just really exacerbates the whole issue, and just tenfold, and just completely blows so many things out of proportion.
Because it's just another aspect of disinformation, isn't it? Because you're taking a small snapshot of what happens and you're displaying it as the entire end product. It's like being at a football match and you record on goal, and then you show someone the goal and you say, okay, the Manchester United won, but they actually got beat 8-1. And that's kind of what's happening. And, it's used as a weapon as well. There's evidence of Russian hackers in these great warehouses in Ukraine. I'm getting a little off topic here, but actively promoting these small 20-second videos of interactions between, especially young black men and the police, in order to foster racial hatred in the United States and foster frustrations. And this has been going on for the last 5 years. It is dangerous.
Oh, it's really
no one's
dangerous.
doing anything about it.
Yeah, and listen, 2 people have lost their lives as a consequence of these protests. Now, what if it turns out that this Facebook Live video, or whatever it was, I don't know what it was on, but if it turns out this video does not show the whole story, why have those
2 people have died for nothing?
2 people have died. I mean, 2 people have died for nothing regardless, but 2 people have died for nothing, for something that should never have happened in the first place anyway. So
what needs to happen is that every police officer in the United States should have a video camera on. Because guess what? These instances, these Facebook Live short clips, would just cease to be overnight. We would actually have the full story right there in front of us, and no one would be able to dispute it.
I think, yeah.
It's for the police officers' protection as much as it is those being detained protection.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I just wonder as well, just going back to the original point, because I forgot to mention this, that when we're talking about law and order, the Constitution gives people a right to peacefully assemble. Okay? How can you do that? How can you just imagine yourself in the shoes of someone who is outraged by something that's happening in their country, something that their government is doing, and they want to go out and protest in the street about it? How the hell can they do that if you have all of this chaos, all of this violence happening?
Absolutely. So, it's almost unconstitutional.
Exactly. Listen, the governor has a duty to maintain law and order in his state. I think he's done the right thing here. I mean, will probably go down as someone as quite an inspiration, I think, when we look back on this whole situation, because he seems to be the first Democrat who cares less about optics and cares more about the people that he is responsible for.
It's not often you hear Ian Smith praising a Democrat. So
I love. There's loads of Democrats that I like. There actually are. Like I'm not a crazy. I'm not a white supremacist. Actually, believe it or not. So I do consider myself somewhat liberal. I just feel abandoned by all of these left-wing parties because they've gone so far left that they're not recognizable anymore, as far as I'm concerned.
Don't worry, I wasn't accusing you of being perhaps swayed towards the Republican end of the spectrum. I would never do such a thing. And I believe that's all we have time for today. So unless you want to add anything else, Yayan, I'm going to ask our lovely viewers and followers to please subscribe to us. It helps us out a lot. And please also do get in contact with us on social media. You can see all the links down in the description below. And thanks for watching.